Hi, welcome to Books with Lexi. Today I'm going to talk to you about my 25 favorite books of 2022. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe. I post 2 to 3 videos a week and host reading sprints as well. So I know top 10 is the popular thing to do, but I read 200 books in 2022 and I absolutely could not just pick a top 10. So the way I'm going to do this is I have 25 total. I am going to go through them and they are not going to be in any order except for the top 3. So here are the books behind me. I have 5 more that I don't own, but obviously I'm still going to talk about them. So I'm going to start with the 5 that I don't own and then we'll get into these ones. So the first one is Navigating the Stars by Maria V. Snyder. This is a This is a YA sci-fi series. YA is not something that I read a lot of. It's not something I love a lot. So this one was really surprising for me. I thought the science was interesting. I liked the characters. I liked the plot. Overall, I had a really good time with it. Next is The Missing by Kirsten Modlin. This I know a lot of people do not like. I think this is ridiculous. I think it is over the top. I think it's kind of dumb. The twist is weird, but I don't know. I really had a good time with it. This is a thriller that ends up following a group of people who get stranded on an island. Next is Jackal by Erin E. Adams. This is a mystery thriller, a little bit of horror, that is following a Black woman who is going back to her small, very white hometown for a wedding, and her friend's daughter goes missing and she realizes that there is a pattern of this. Next is Heartstopper Volume 2 by Alice Oseman. I feel like everyone knows what Heartstopper is, but this is a romance graphic novel. I didn't love the first one, but the second one is definitely my favorite. And then probably the most surprising for me to make it on this list is Death in Her Hands by Otessa Moshfegh. This is very much literary fiction. It does have a mystery element in it, but we are just following one character and her internal thoughts as she finds a note that says, "Here's the dead body, you won't find me," but there's no dead body. Just a reminder that these are not ranked in any way. I just threw them on the shelf. So the first one I have to talk about is Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant. This is sci-fi horror. It's really interesting because in this one, we are following a crew who is investigating what happened to a past ship that went silent. We know that there were no survivors, but we don't really know why. Turns out there are killer mermaids. So it's really cool to see the horror from a science perspective. The next one I have to talk about is Stark Berserk by Jessica Guest. This is a horror novella that is following these high school kids. It is their senior trip and they end up kind of ditching it. They know that there was a massacre at this local carnival that is now shut down, so they decide to go there and things very quickly start to go wrong. Next is You're Invited by Amanda Giatissa. This one I know a lot of people ended up not liking, but I thought it was fun, it was over the top, it was dramatic, it was interesting. This is a thriller that follows a woman who goes to Sri Lanka to stop the wedding of her ex-best friend and ex-boyfriend. Next I have You've Lost a Lot of Blood by Eric LaRocca. This is a horror novella and this one is fun because we are getting a book within a book. So we are following audio transcripts that have been found after a man and his partner go missing. It seems pretty obvious that the one man killed the other, and inserted in that is a novella that the man that is assumed to be the murderer wrote and actually published in the past. It's really interesting. I liked both storylines in this, and I cannot wait to read more from this author. The next one on this list is kind of a surprise to me, and this is A Brush with Love by Maisie Eddings. Michelle is probably screaming right now. I read this because she predicted it would be 5 stars. Oh, also, I read Into the Drowning Deep because Kaylee predicted this would be 5 stars for me. And I read Death in Her Hands because Amy predicted it would be 5 stars for me. Anyway, A Brush with Love is a romance between 2 dental students, so like that does not sound fun. But their relationship, the anxiety representation was just incredible, and I had a great time with this. Next, I have Gallows Hill by Darcy Coates. This is horror that is following a woman who is estranged from her parents and finds out that they have just died and she has inherited their winery. So she goes to kind of get things in order to sell the place and ends up finding herself in a haunted situation. Next, I have Hidden Pictures by Jason Rakulik. We are following a woman who just got out of rehab or a similar situation, and she's trying to have a fresh start. She becomes a nanny for this family, and the boy starts to draw creepy pictures that seem like they could be connected to a past disappearance. Another one from the video where I read 5-star predictions from friends. My friend Erin from Erin Megan recommended this to me, and this is Confessions by Kanai Minato. I feel like everyone at this point has read this, but it is told in multiple perspectives, and the main story that we are following is these two boys killed a young girl, and the girl ended up being their teacher's daughter, and she is trying to get revenge. Next, I have The Perfect Ruin by Shanora Williams. This is a thriller that is following a woman who is trying to get revenge on another woman for something she did to her in the past. But this other woman apparently doesn't know she did anything to her, so she's like slowly sneaking her way in, trying to infiltrate everything. It is so dramatic, it deals with some rich people drama, and it's a lot of fun. Next, I know this one is a little controversial, and this is A History of Wild Places by Shea Earnshaw. I do think that the synopsis for this is false, and this is pretty predictable as well, but I really love the atmosphere in here. I love the writing, but pretty much we are following a few different people who live in this commune called Pastoral, but they're not allowed to leave because of this weird sickness that they don't really know much about. The synopsis says some other stuff in it, but that's only the first chapter. I also would like a book that is just from the first chapter's story, but I really love this one. Another one that I've seen on so many worst lists of the year. The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. I just think this was ridiculous and a lot of fun, and all the characters sucked, but in the best way for me. The twists were ridiculous and over the top, and I just really loved this. I know a lot of people think this one is boring, as well as You're Invited, but I just did not have that experience. I liked that there were a lot of characters in here, and it was a little confusing sometimes because of it. This is more of a locked room mystery. It's not because they can go out into the world, but the main focus is this apartment building. So I think that it made sense to have a larger cast and also have other people introduced, so you feel like you never really know what's going on. Next, I have The Change by Kirsten Miller. This is more of a mystery. It's a little slower. It is huge, but we are following 3 different women who are dealing with different things in their lives. They are having life changes, and they end up coming together and investigating a murder. The one character can hear voices from people who have died and have not been avenged. Another one is known as the Town Witch, and another one realizes that she can channel her anger into her hands and make them really hot and like burn things and stuff. I really loved the characters in this. I enjoyed the story and the relationships and the characters. Did I say that already? I don't know, but this was a great time. I feel like I've been talking forever. Next, I have Dead Silence by S.A. Barnes. This is sci-fi horror. We are following our main character, who is a salvage crew, like, leader, and they are on their last mission before they go back, and their ship is retired, but they end up hearing a distress signal, and they decide to go investigate, and they end up finding this old, abandoned, pretty much the Titanic of space. So people didn't really know what ended up happening on the ship, what went wrong, but they're like, oh, we could get some stuff and sell it, like this is our claim, so we're gonna be rich. So they start investigating, but they start hearing whispers in the dark, things written on the wall in blood, creepy things, and they end up having to figure out what happened so that they don't meet the same fate. And I have Just Like Mother by Anne Heltzel. This is one that I completely understand is predictable. I can see why people don't like this if they want more twists and stuff, but I just think that the psychological aspects of cults and stuff like that is super interesting. So we are following our main character, and she was part of a cult when she was younger. Her and her cousin ended up escaping because of her, but they parted ways and they just reconnect, and she goes and stays with her cousin for a little. Her cousin now owns this business that is focused on like motherhood and stuff, and our main character is starting to get kind of weird vibes from it. And because of being around her cousin again, she's starting to have memories from the past. Next, I have The Weight of Blood by Tiffany D. Jackson. This is a YA Carrie retelling. I do think that it follows the story of Carrie fairly closely. She lives in a town that has a segregated prom. She is mixed, and her white father is forcing her to pass as white. She has to straighten her hair. She's not allowed to get it wet. All this stuff. There's all these rules. So this pretty much does follow the story of Carrie. She gets bullied at the beginning. Things happen. She discovers her telekinetic powers. And the whole time we know that something bad happened at the prom. So we are following everything leading up to that. I liked the added conversations of racism in here. On top of Carrie, the telekinetic stuff was interesting. I thought the characters in here were flawed in a way that was done really well. And this one is a tough read, but I think it's done well and really important. And honestly, I'm kind of surprised I love this because I don't really love Carrie, but I think this is so good. Next, I have Uzumaki by Junji Ito. This is manga that is about spirals. That's so disturbing. This book really disturbed me. The art style in here goes really well with the stories that are being told. This is actually pretty much a collection of intertwined short stories. It both is and is not a continuous story. It's really hard to explain, but it is done so well. I cannot fathom coming up with this many ways that spirals can be scary. I had a physical reaction to this book. I'm not someone that like gasps and screams when reading, but that happened for this. Because of this, I started reading more manga. Disturbing, interesting, and a great time. The last one before my top 3 is Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister. This one might be a bit of a surprise. I have not talked about this on my channel at all. I read this, I think, in August or September, but the video that it's in keeps getting pushed back. So you'll see a video featuring this eventually, and we're just going to pretend that that part was not filmed so long ago. And the only thing I mentioned about this in my wrap-up, I think, was probably that I liked it, but I didn't really say anything other than that. I'm surprised that I like this one. I don't really usually love Reese's Book Club picks, but this one is so interesting. It is definitely more of a mystery. So at the very beginning, we watch a woman witness her son killing someone right outside of her house. And then he gets arrested and everything. And the next morning she wakes up and it is the day before. So every time she goes to sleep, she wakes up and she has gone back in time. It's not necessarily a day every time. It starts off being the day before, and then there are some time jumps, and she starts to believe that the reason she's going back is to stop the murder that her son committed. So she's learning about the events leading up to this murder. The psychological stuff in here is really good, and we are just watching her experience all these events to figure out what was the cause of this murder eventually happening. Okay, the last 3. If you have watched my channel at all, you're probably not surprised about any of these. I never ever stop talking about them. These are my top 3 favorites of the year. So third is Sundial by Katrina Ward. I'm so glad that I love this book so much because the cover is incredible. Oh, okay. I think Katrina Ward might be my favorite, if not in my like top 3 favorite authors. I love her writing style, which is not something I really ever think about when reading. Usually, as long as it's not like atrocious, I'm fine reading it. But this is so interesting to me. I think that the way she plots her books is just so smart. So the entire time there are clues to everything while you're reading. In my opinion, while things are shocking in her books, they are not meant to shock you as if it's a surprise out of nowhere twist. The entire time she tells you exactly what's happening without telling you exactly what's happening, and it is so smart and it is interesting. There's so many psychological aspects to it, which I think is one of my favorite things in horror specifically. I love the way that multiple different stories are weaved together. I am obsessed with this book. I am going to reread it hopefully soon. This one is a bit slower, but I think for me, the intrigue was high enough that that didn't bother me. There is animal cruelty in here. It is a scientific kind of animal cruelty, but I mean, it is in there and it is a major part of the book, so it's not like one scene that you can skip. It personally didn't bother me, but I know it could be a lot for some people to read. But I'm obsessed with her writing and the way she weaves everything together. And I think her plots are really unique, and I absolutely cannot wait to read more from her. Hi, sorry for the very sudden change. I did not tell you what Sundial was about at all. I went on and on about Katrina Ward and her writing and just like generally things about her books, but like I didn't tell you what this book is. So quickly, we are following our main character, Rob, and she on the outside has a perfect life. She has a house, a husband, 2 kids, but her oldest daughter is like doing some weird things. She's collecting bones. She's whispering to imaginary people all the time. And Rob sees a darkness in Callie that reminds her of her family. So Rob decides to take Callie to her old family home called Sundial to kind of explain some things to her. Rob wants to tell Callie about her past, but things are really weird between them, and Callie starts to think that Rob brought her there to kill her. This is psychological horror. The plot is so interesting. It is a little bit on the slower side. So we are watching Rob tell Callie stories of the past. We're getting the past as it's happening and also the present and watching them intertwine together. It's so good. But I mostly just talked about Katrina Ward as an author the whole time instead of actually telling you what this book even was. So I wanted to make sure I did that for you. Number 2 is Pen Pal by Dathan Auerbach. This was a surprise to me. I knew that this book existed, but I couldn't even remember where I heard it from. I now know that it was from Erin, but whenever I read this, I had zero expectations going into it because it was one that I had put on my want to read so long ago and then I forgot everything about it. So I ended up reading this because it fit a prompt for Halloween, and I was so shocked at how much I love this. So we are following a man in the present as he is recounting a few different stories from his past. At the time that these stories happened, he did not realize that they were all connected, but seeing them all together, you realize that there is something stringing all these stories together. This actually started on No Sleep. I can never remember. No Sleep? Yeah, No Sleep on Reddit, and then it was published through Kickstarter, which is interesting. That has nothing to do with why I liked it. I think that this book is so suspenseful. I was physically stressed while reading this book. I read it on sprints, and I was like just screaming about it. I know that people bought it because of my reaction that I was having while reading it, which is not something that happens a lot. Usually, even if I'm liking a book, I don't have physical reactions. I could not shut up about this book, about how stressed I was. There is one story in here in particular that like I could not breathe. These stories are weaved together in such an interesting way, and still you don't really know what's going on as you're reading. The overarching theme, overarching, I don't know. Pen Pal, our main character, when he is in kindergarten, it's his class project, and you like send off a balloon with your name and like request that a letter be sent back to the school for a pen pal. So that is the thing that kicks off this whole story. It's I need to reread this right now. I want to reread Sundial, I want to reread this, and I want to reread the next one. I might do a vlog reading just those 3 so I can just scream for an entire vlog about how much I love these books. This is another one that is kind of slow. There are events that happen, but it's more of the creepiness factor, the tension, the suspense. Incredible. I love this book. Okay, number 1, this is not a surprise to anyone. The Last Housewife by Ashley Winstead. This book is disturbing. Well, a lot of these books are disturbing, but my top 3 are like specifically really disturbing. So maybe I have some things I need to think about. But this one comes with content warnings at the beginning, so that tells you something. This is a thriller, but it 100% has horrific things in it. It is dark, it is disturbing, it is a lot to read. This is another one that like I was having physical reactions to while reading. After I read this, I don't think I read for 2 days. I usually will finish a book and I'll just start another one almost immediately. And this one, I read it and then I just sat and stared off into space for probably an hour. Like, I could not bring myself to do anything but think about this book. We're following our main character, Shay, and she's listening to a podcast that her old friend runs, and she learns that one of her friends from college has just committed suicide, but the friend that runs the podcast thinks that this is not the case. So he is like, if you're listening, please contact me. So she does that and they end up investigating this case. Another one of her friends in college also died in the same way, so that makes it suspicious. Shay is coming to terms with a lot of things that happened to her when she was in college. A lot of things are bringing up really bad memories for her, and we are learning about those. It's not good stuff. We find out that there is a patriarchal sex cult, so there's a lot of stuff that is dealing with that. This book deals with the patriarchy, with how in our society men are more important than women, getting justice for that, feminism in general, trauma, a lot of sexual stuff in here, like not in a fun way. It's disturbing. There's a lot of like psychological stuff in here that I found so interesting. This book made me angry. I was so mad while reading it. It's not one that I was like, oh, this is so fun to read. It's really difficult to read. It is a lot, especially living in a society where generally women are not valued as much, not as important. It's a lot. And I had so many emotions from this, and it's one that I wholeheartedly recommend if the content is going to be okay for you. This is not one that you should just pick up for fun. It's a lot, but I think it was done incredibly well. I think it was so interesting and important, and I'm incredibly glad that I read this. And Ashley Winstead is definitely one of my favorite authors now. So those are my 25 favorite books of 2022, a little over the top 10% of my reading for the year. I read so many incredible books this year. I also did 4 rereads of 5-star books that, like, if I read them for the first time, they would have all been on this list. If you've read any of these 25 books, let me know your thoughts on them. If any of these were in your top favorites of the year, let me know. And if not, still let me know what some of your favorite books of the year were. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I hope to see you in my next one. Bye!